Tasty items. Wait, so you're still running the ICC, right?
Yeah, it's really good. We're the only can't feel stuff as much anymore.
No, I've already had something.
You have?
Yeah. Anyway, I don't drink coffee.
Well, yeah, or just means, having.
These are from a couple years
Right,
ago.
right.
Huh?
Yeah.
These are from a couple of years ago. They're still.
Relevant.
We're starting to put baby wells and it's still worth that, right? We're that used to be like that. I found something. Again this year.
Gotcha.
Catching me eating.
Say, za wasze zdrowie, towarzysz.
Habitat for a lot of different insects, pollinators, and our island marbled butterfly, and our moths. And the UW has done studies, and they found that Chinook salmon, especially when they're young and they're too small to eat the forage fish, that they're a really good food source for them is various insects near shore. Their diet kind of changes offshore to more copepods and herring and things like that. So Orca Recovery Day is a big effort put on by conservation districts from south of BC all the way to Northern California, up and down the coast. It started off with 40 events early, like just a couple months ago, and it's already grown to 80 events. So last year was the first year. There was hundreds of people that came out. This year there's thousands, and Governor Jay Inslee just kind of sent out a proclamation designating October 19th as Orca Recovery Day. So hopefully this is momentum and something that just grows and grows and involves more people, getting kind of boots on the ground, and politicians and researchers and everybody to get together in like this effort today. Of course, it's not just one day that we should come out here and help our southern resident killer whales. But so there's a lot of things that we can do as individuals. I have like a little flyer in there with 10 things that you guys can do on your own individually. So I'm going to pass the floor over to Sam Barr from our Stillaguamish tribe representative. And I would like you to kind of welcome us to the land.
I just have to keep my drum warm. This is an actual rawhide drum, so I have to keep it warm. Ho, ho, ho. Oh, ho ho, ho ho ho, ho ho ho, ho ho ho. Si am, this jalacha ashla tia, Sam sanasnat, chok sa amashsan, chok alach ilchsan, a tia kayats, isiwat, nashwakwat tia, a akwacha makwat, nis slakamish kusat, naslitza kosholomachan, Kwanangsan, Kostlitz, Samakwat, Sakosholomachan. Si u Shwakwa Ajatlas Lalsa, Sakosholomachan. U Akwai Atol Sakosholomachan, Itza Kwokolachen, Stli Atol, Saspal, Stli Atol, Sakwam Sasu. Quite at all, so Kosolomachan eats a feeling of Sleet at all, Sustano, Sleet at all, Quam Salsa, Kol, Kwanang, Kolong out, Schwalach, Kwanang, Schwalach, Sleet at all, Quam Salsa. Si am. So do a little bit of translating. Hello everybody, my name is Sam. Thanking the creator today. Thanking everyone for being here today. I came here today from Anacortes with my family. I am from Samish. Samish is one of the tribes that is indigenous to these San Juan Islands. There were many tribes that would come out here, as many of you know. Samish, Lummi, Klallam, Saanich, all the Saanich bands. So I came here from Anacortes, which translates to the ironwood place, a place of plants that twist together. I'm here today because I love the orca, and I believe that many of us here today love the orcas. That word, Kosholomachan, from the orca, it's kol, like kolong out. Kol means to rise, and that's the word that we use when we set up camp, kolong, to raise house, kolong out. And then the last part of Kosholomachan is the shlal achin, and that means spray back. So uch, like shwalach, the name for Lopez, reef nets on the back. So that's what that word means. Kosholomachan, it translates to rising spray back, because that's most of the interaction that us humans have with the orcas. And there are many translations and many meanings for this word for orca. It is true that they are our relatives of the sea. And modern Western science is actually catching up to that notion, and they're finding things out about the orcas that indigenous peoples in their traditional way of knowing always had a concept of that, but modern science has recently discovered that when orca pods meet each other, they actually have these greeting protocols, much the same that Coast Salish people do when they're traveling by sea as well. They also have regional dialects. Even in local pods, there'll be regional small differences in their dialects, which is again another similarity that they have to us, especially out here in the Salish Sea. Each tribe would speak languages that are very closely related, but each tribe has a slightly different dialect. That's the reason that I bring out the language today, is because it's part of the land, and that dialect is ever so slightly different between each group, because they have their own connection to the land and the place. There are many languages here that belong here today that have been here for over 10,000 years. And so I bring this language forward as part of healing one of the many things that affect the orcas today. A lack of that spirit and a lack of that language. It's a tragedy to have that lost from the land. It's just like you can't look at a picture of this place and have it be the same. You can't disconnect the smell of the ocean from these beach sides. You can't disconnect the language from this place either. And that's one of the reasons I open with that today. And so the orcas are truly a relative of the sea. There are many similarities between us and them, and it's one of the reasons that they're worth saving. You know, they're a very majestic being. When we think about other things that are related, the orcas are related to the butterflies, Volkolachen. They both need these healthy oceanside prairies. These oceanside prairies feed different nutrients into the sea, which promotes the healthy shoreline ecosystem. And that same system the butterflies are dependent on. So in that way we see those connections as relatives as well. They both need healthy beaches and healthy prairies. Other ways that the humans are related to the orcas is that we both need the salmon. In traditional times, the salmon was one of the main sources of food to keep people alive in this area. When we talk about saving the orcas, I truly believe that it's really focused on saving the entire ecosystem. You know, these apex species that are at the top of these ecosystems, you know, are so reliant on every piece below them being healthy, just like us humans truly are. You know, we try to disconnect ourselves from our nature, and that's going to catch up with us. And so humans also need that healthy Tlautlausa, the Salish Sea, the salt water, Tlautlausa. And the Lushootseed word for Tlautlausa is Holj, which is an onomatopoeia based on the sound that the ocean waves make. You know, these languages, the Lekwungen languages, which include Samish and Lummi, Klallam, and Saanich, is a language that was spoken here in the islands because so many people had come out here to partake in the rich salmon fishery out here, which is the same reason that the orcas are out here. And it's impossible to disconnect ourselves from them. You know, so we need that healthy ocean. And I was honored to be asked out here last year to do an opening, and I'm very happy to be here today. I do wish that we could say that more has been done. I'm very grateful that we now have an official, bureaucratic recognized day. That's wonderful. I would love to see a lot more done than a name on a day, honestly. And I don't say that to put any of us down. These people who are all here today, I know truly, love this ecosystem as well and love these orcas. I know that we're all here today to do what little part we can. I'm really grateful to see all the activism here in the islands, pushing back a little bit against, you know, some of the decisions that have been made within the county. I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that we could, you know, take on to make some differences, and so far people aren't doing anything. It's much the same way as climate change. There are so many very obvious steps that we can take, and there's zero systematic change. I think that's something that each one of us should carry heavy in our heart and try to spread the word and try to tell someone that matters, that might be able to have the power to do that. That's really, aside from days like today where we get our hands dirty, you know, one thing that we need is real pressure on the political system to make some changes. And some of us might have to make sacrifices, but these orcas have been here for, you know, well over 10,000 years. Salmon have been here for 1 million years. There's a really powerful fossil of a 1-million-year-old salmon skeleton that came from this area. It's at the Burke Museum. And when we try to wrap our minds around the timescales out here, it's something that we can't even comprehend as an American society. You know, America's been a country for about 300 years. It's a very baby country in the global scale of political nations. The indigenous tribes, there's hard archaeological evidence of 10,000 years of occupation. There's beaches where there are shell middens, and if you look at the layers of shell midden, you can see that there was one layer where there was occupation for 2,000 years on one village site. 2,000 years of marine resources being deposited, you know, these shell heaps being built up. And then people would move, and there'd be 1,000 or 2,000 years of just natural soil accumulation, people not using that village site. And then they'd come back and live there for another 1,000 years. You know, these are the time scales that we're looking at when we look at these ecosystems and how these creatures have evolved. And, you know, in the 150 years that Washington's been colonized like this, we're in a mass extinction now. And we're all standing by and watching it happen. And I hope that it's empowering to think of yourselves as relatives. You know, this is family that we're trying to save. This is an ecosystem that people are deeply, deeply connected to out here. And so I thank you all for listening, and I hope that the language went to a good place. Aishka.
Sure, yeah, I'm Mike Ramsey. I'm the Conservation District Manager, and thank you all for coming. I have only been here about 1 year and 3/4, and I feel very honored to be in such a special place and feel the weight of protecting our ecosystem and restoring it. I come from a background of salmon recovery for the state of Washington. I was a grant manager for 18 years there, and helped fund the fish utilization studies that occurred around here, so I have a good understanding of fish use and priorities. And at the Conservation District, we're trying to prioritize our actions to help orca survival, and projects like this are super important. They're small, but they say Puget Sound is dying by 1,000 cuts, and it's kind of true, but every action we take to heal and make the ecosystem more healthy is beneficial for the orca and all the food chain down below. So I just want to thank everybody for coming and participating and feeling like we need to do something for the orca and sharing that as a community. So thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. So we have a bunch of gloves up by my van. We have shovels, and the goal of the day is to kind of turn this big thistle patch into native butterfly and insect and pollinator habitat. So let's get geared up, get a shovel. There might not be enough shovels for everybody, but you know, you can take turns planting and shoveling. And let's work for, you know, about an hour. We'll break at 12:30, come back for some lunch, and then we're going to hear from a lot of different researchers, local researchers who work closely with the whales and have a lot of knowledge. So we're going to get updates from what they found over the season, being out on the water with them, and the projects that they have going on, upcoming, so that we can kind of keep this momentum going and keep this fight happening. So thank you all for coming, and let's get to work. Sierra.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she has plenty of energy without him. Yes, you do. Maybe some muffin, though.
Oh, yeah.
Around update as to how these whales are doing and kind of what's happening, what you guys are seeing. So we want to hear from you. You guys are closest to them. So why don't we start with Katie Jones from the Center of Whale Research. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me here. And help me to speak up. I don't always have the loudest voice, so I apologize for that if you guys can't hear me. But yes, Sarah, it's nice to ask you to be here today. I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of a population update and kind of what we saw throughout the year with regard to the southern resident killer whales. So, of course, as most of you probably know, they weren't here a whole lot this summer. It was kind of an odd summer as far as that was concerned. They didn't spend a lot of time in the waters of the Salish Sea. Weren't here at all any of the days in June, which is the first time we've ever documented that since we started the study. And then, of course, they were here a few days in July, a little bit more in August and September. And, of course, Jake has been spending some time on Puget Sound recently. But just overall, just give you a little bit of an idea of what's happened as far as the year is concerned. Of course, we lost 3 whales this year. J17, who is a 42-year-old female with the matriarchs in J-Pod. She, of course, is survived by J35, Lakewa, who carried her baby around for 17 days last summer. She's also survived by her son, J44, and her other daughter, J53. We also lost K25, a 28-year-old male who was really in the prime of his life. He's survived by 2 sisters and a brother, K20, K27, and K34. Unfortunately, last winter was in very poor body condition, same with J17 as well. And then lastly, LA4, who was a 29-year-old male, had been missing in the encounters connected conducted by the Canadian Department of Fisheries and Oceans in the summer on the west coast of Vancouver Island. LPOD really hasn't been in the inland waters much at all of the Sailor Sea this year. And unfortunately, L84, that's kind of a sad story because he was the last of the L9 natural line, of which 10 whales have died previously. On to a little bit happier note. It's like all the bad news first, but we have had 2 babies recently, and very optimistic about that. Of course, we desperately need these babies to grow up and have babies of their own. But we had L124 going into LPOD, going to L77, who is a 32-year-old female. And this is actually her 3rd calf. She had L114 in 2010, and that whale didn't survive the year. But she also has L119, who is a female born in 2012, and she's doing well. And L124 was first seen in January this year, probably a couple weeks old at the time, so likely born probably at the end of December 2018. We do not know the sex of that whale yet, but fingers crossed it's a female. And then, of course, we had day 56 born in day 31 in May of this year, which is pretty exciting. And that's day 31's first viable offspring that she's had. It is a female, thankfully, and appears healthy. And as of our July 1st census date, the southern resident killer whale population is sitting at 73 individuals. And it's no secret that they're at a critical point. And of course, the biggest threat, there's a laundry list of different issues that affect this population, of course, but the biggest threat by far is their food supply. And the work you guys are doing here today is just awesome, and I'm really thankful that you guys are all here today. And again, I'd like to thank you for having me here to share a little bit of an update. Thank you, guys.
Next, let's hear from Jess Newley from the Friends of the San Juans. Yeah. Thank you for the lunch here. That was really good. Oh, yeah.
My name is Jess Neely. I work for Friends of the San Juans, a nonprofit here on the island, and I am a marine program assistant, and so I get to do a lot of fun field work and a lot with forage fish in our shorelines, and forage fish are a super, super important food source for the salmon, and of course the orca eat the salmon, so we're starting with the bottom of the food chain. Anyone seen a diagram like this before? Huh? So we're talking these little guys down here. And yeah, and like all the plants that we're planting today, it really helps with the insect population. And then the plankton, so we're talking about really, really small stuff that really is the start of the energy that goes up the food line for our orca. So super important little guys, which is one of the reasons why we have this is a map of the San Juans. Here we are right here. And I love this map because it actually shows we're a very, very popular rearing habitat. So that means that small salmon, when they're coming down the rivers after being born, and they come down the rivers and they stop in here in the San Juan Islands. And it's not just like the Skagit River salmon. If you look at these, all like Fraser River salmon are also coming here. So we have populations from the Fraser River, Chinook and other salmon coming in, coming from the Puget Sound and all over. So this area that we live and work in or visiting are super, super important area for these little salmon on their way out to the ocean. So they come here, and when they're that big, they are eating a lot of plankton and the insects coming off of our shorelines. And then as soon as they can get onto eating protein and forage fish, the better chance they have of surviving and making it out to the ocean to strong, healthy fish and feeding our orcas. And that is the goal of these. So, forage fish, which I work in a lot. Just want to pass those around. Never seen that before, have you? Yeah. salmon are eating the herring when they're offshore in the Flagey area. And then near shore habitat, we have surf smelt and sand lance. And so these guys, they spawn on our beaches. So it's really important to keep our beaches really nice and natural substrate, because that's where they lay their eggs. So yeah, and that's what I do during the winter time, is I go out from November to like February is when Pacific sand lance are spawning, and pretty much to every beach that's possible, and collect sand, bags of sand. Lots of bags of sand collecting during the winter, and then we look through the sand and try to find sand lance eggs, and that helps. And then we can, we find eggs, 2 or more on a beach, then we can document the site, and that helps for regulatory purposes and to protect the beach from being developed. So super important work. Like these beaches are some that I sample right out here, and if you check these out when you go outside, that's really good substrate and spawning habitat. So it's a mix of like cobble and smaller sand that they use. And if anybody is around here this winter and would like to get involved in forage fish work, next weekend Friends and the MRC are hosting a forage fish training workshop, and it's next Saturday, the 26th. At 9 a.m. I think at the fire hall, that room above the fire hall. Anyway, if you're interested, talk to me afterwards. We could use all the help we can get. Last winter, just me and Tina, we did all the public beaches across all the islands. We're trying to get a big army of volunteers out, citizen scientists on our beaches to help cover more coverage. The more coverage and more samples we get, hopefully the more eggs we find, and the more protection and natural beaches we'll have for the salmon and for the orca. Thank you. Thank you. So I'll pass on some eggs too.
And we also have Giles here from Wild Orca, doing great work, and also Sadie worked on the boat this season.
So we're actually with the Center for Conservation Biology at the University of Washington, and we use a scat detection dog on the front of our boat to sniff out killer whale feces on cue. And this year we found 27 southern resident killer whale samples. We did have some pretty decent looking ones floated at the surface full of fat. That's what we want to see. Unfortunately, we also saw some that were quite small, no fat. We interestingly saw more parasites this year than we've collected in the past, so that's interesting. And we don't know what that means yet, but something to note. This is my 10th year doing this project, and this year marked the weirdest year. As Katie hinted, it was the first year on record where we didn't have no occurrences of any southern resident killer whales in the inland water in the month of June. That should be a core time for them to be in their summer core critical habitat. What we're finding from past studies, from past fecal samples that we've collected, is that they're just not getting enough to eat. 70% of females that get pregnant cannot bring their babies to term. They're spontaneously miscarrying, and out of that 70%, about almost a quarter of those are late-term pregnancies. We know that that's very hard on the moms, because when you have a full-term baby like that, it's very hard to pass them. And we lost one of our most beloved and well-known whales, J32 Rhapsody, a couple of years ago because her baby died in her and she couldn't expel it. So these are interesting findings, but I think the more interesting finding that's correlated with that is that all of those females were lacking in nutrition. So when they don't have enough food, they miscarry their babies, just like all mammals. And so while we look at a lot of different factors, one of our most recent studies, I think is interesting to note, the most recent paper that came out last year, around this time last year, looked at PAH, which I liken to smog coming off of our cars. PAH is coming off of our boats. And what we did find in that study, which I think is very germane to this region, is that prior to the regulations, the vessel distance regulations, going into effect when boats only had to stay 100 yards away from the whales. We had samples from that period of time, and then we also had samples after the 200-yard distance regulation was put into effect. And we actually saw a decline in the PAH in the fecal samples. And so that's really great. That's applied science right there. That's showing how science can inform policymakers. And that's what we're continuing to do. To that end, I went way out of my comfort zone this week and spent 3 days in Washington, D.C., talking with our elected officials. And the one thing that I heard about from them, from all of them, is that they're not hearing from the constituents. We were there specifically to talk about the plight of the southern resident killer whales, to let them know that they're in dire straits. We need to be making wholesale management changes in regard to fisheries, dam breaching when necessary. We've done a lot on vessel impacts, but that's something to continue to look at. And what they said to us is that they're not hearing from enough people. And so that's really discouraging. This is at the federal level, but the same thing can be said at the state level. So my group, Wild Orca, I'm funded for the killer whale work through Sam Wasser's project, the Conservation Canines. And then my group, Wild Orca, takes those findings and translates that for the public and policymakers to try and understand better what we can do as individuals. So feel free to go to our website, wildorca.org and conservationcanines.org. If you want to learn more. One thing that I kept getting asked by the people that we met with is there hope? Are you without hope? How can you continue to do this work knowing that there are only 73? I am not without hope. Looking around at this room, it gives me hope. Looking at all of the people that have engaged and gotten involved gives me hope, and the whales themselves give me hope. They're incredibly resilient. The fish that they rely on are incredibly resilient. We just need to give them a little bit of a break. And so this kind of work, although it seems really teeny tiny, it adds up. It adds up and it makes an impact. So I'm really happy to have been invited to participate in this, and I look forward to doing some more work in our islands and beyond.
Jen, thank you for your work so much.
Sadie Youngstrom is my co-host teammate, so the three of us are the ones that are on the boat all the time out there trying to collect not only samples from southern resident killer whales, but now baleen whales to look at forage fish and krill populations, as well as the big mammal-eating killer whales. So we're trying that too.
And the collaboration with Michael Weiss.
Oh yeah, I do want to mention that. So we collaborated with the Center for Whale Research this year. It was really fantastic because it allowed us to keep a boat off the water. Michael Weiss, who is a graduate student through the Center for Whale Research, and he flew his drone from our boat, and we were able to find the whales poop a lot, actually. They poop a lot more than what we have thought in the past. The problem is that a lot of that fecal sample is very watery and diffuse. So the dog can smell it, the drone can see it, but we can't get to it. It's not enough fat content. So again, it always goes back to the fish and not having enough high quality and quantity prey. So yeah, that was great to be able to work with these guys. And if you go to their website, they talk about that on their website. Thanks, Sadie.
Yeah. We also have Jen and Thompson with us. Thomas with us. From Orca Relief.
Thank you. I want to start just by reading a little bit from GCL. One of the most powerful experiences for me many years ago was connecting with Steve Old Coyote, the head of the Suquamish tribe, and we had ended up writing a play together. And the movement of that experience in me in relationship to our First Peoples has been very powerful in my life. So this booklet was actually produced by the Suquamish tribe. There are many, many versions in Chief CL's speech, but this one is put together from people who are very close to him. And this is just a few lines. Every part of this country is sacred to my people. Every hillside, every valley, every plain and grove has been hallowed by some fond memory or sad experience of my tribe. Even the rocks that seem to lie dumb as they swelter in the sun along the silent seashore in solemn grandeur, thrill with memories of past events, connected with the fate of my people. And the very dust under your feet responds more lovingly to our footsteps than to yours, because it is the ashes of our ancestors, and our bare feet are conscious of the sympathetic touch, for the soil is rich with the life of our kindred. It isn't a white world after all. That's a chapter out of a book I wrote called The Battle in Seattle about the WTO demonstrations. And we forget that. It isn't a white world. And it's a world that belongs to the southern residents. And they're facing imminent extinction. And that's the heartbreak. There's very little indication that they're going to survive. So how much good does all our scholarship do? How much good does our observation, how much good does our science do in the fate of the orcas? I just want to leave that question in the middle of the room. So Orca Relief was started 22 years ago by scientists. Mark Anderson was the first director of the Whale Museum. He created it as a research museum, which it still is. He had one rule. Every scientist, every researcher who went and studied the orcas was not allowed to say where they'd seen those whales for 24 hours. He knew what invasive actions on our parts could do to the orcas. He started Orca Relief when the whales were in Dice Inlet. They trapped themselves in there basically for a month in 1997. Why? They were besieged by helicopters and people in boats. And it turned out there was a salmon hatchery up a stream, and the salmon were coming down into Dice Inlet. And the salmon were there, and the orcas were there eating. And so he was immediately informed by this experience that they were running out of food. So for more than 20 years, Orca Relief has been working hard to get a whale protection zone off their core critical habitat, which is the west side of this island. And it's continually being undermined by money. And that's the heartbreaking thing that's going on here. There's a lot that can be done for the whales by simply getting out of their way. And we have a whale watching industry that is ruthless in its determination. The truth is, the distances that are established right now aren't effective, and they aren't followed by the whale watch industry. The echolocation for southern residents is like all our senses combined. They need echolocation to see, to hear, to navigate, to communicate. The cavitation impact from propellers and the noise from engines destroys their ability to literally exist. And I want to share a small moment. I'm not a scientist. I'm somebody who sits at a computer and writes up a bunch of shit. But when I saw that picture of Takala, and I don't know if I'm saying that name correctly, my first thought is, why am I seeing this photograph? Why am I being told that this calf lived for less than an hour? Because what that meant was that somebody was watching. There was a boat there. There's a spotting system around this whole area that sells and gives out information as to where the orcas are all the time. And what is that about? I mean, just because we're engaged in our concern, don't we have to look at the ways in which we are concerned? And how is the impact of our concern? So I came on to Orca Relief late in the game. I have tremendous admiration and respect for the people in the organization that have gone these many years. So 3 years ago, the whale protection zone, it was petitioned. Most of it was written by a man named Dr. Timothy Reagan, who is a scientist, and he is the retired executive director of the U.S. Marine Mammal Commission. So all of the work that we have done is rooted in total science. The feds have ignored the petition, and so 2 months ago, the Center for Biological Diversity, we filed a lawsuit against them for 3 years of inaction, non-action. So we're waiting, and we're expecting next week to actually hear whether or not they're going to be considering the petition for the protections. I've got flyers here. This is a little bit of an update. And then there's some there's another chart that has some information in there too. So thank you. I'm sorry if I've been a little aggressive. It's a bit of a challenging time in all directions right now on the planet. And here's hoping that we don't go extinct.
Sure is. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And lastly, to follow that up, actually there was a whale flag program that just got implemented. Frankie can talk a little bit more about that from the MRC.
Yeah, my name is Frances Robertson, mostly known as Frankie. I'm the lead staff for the Marine Resources Committee here in the county, and also the Marine Program Coordinator for the county, so leading all the county's southern resident killer whale recovery efforts. And I have my sidekick here. I don't know if you just wave up. I see arms flying.
They can't see.
Okay. You can't see. Anyway, so I guess our two, this is a good segue, our two main efforts at the moment, we're heavily involved in voter outreach and education. We're partners in the Trans Boundaries of International Be Whale-Wise Partnership. As part of this, we implemented the whale warning flag last year, which is basically a flag that you hoist when whales are in a half-mile of you, that's telling voters that whales are around and slow down and all that jazz. Turn off eco sounders and follow all the guidelines and regulations. It's in use in Canada for humpback whales, and we brought it down here to try and see if it could be a tool that we could try and address some of the vessel issues surrounding, or vessel impacts for southern residents. So I do want to give a shout out to all the youth conservation corps crews this year. You rocked it. You totally rocked it. They really got out there on the docks for us on all 3 islands, Ferry Surf Islands, and were helping share the message with voters and get flags out to voters. So that's one of our efforts, and we're continuing that. And the other effort that we're really just starting to initiate is we are undertaking a systematic marine spatial planning effort off the west side of San Juan Island to try and investigate what kind of protection we can offer the southern residents for high priority foraging areas. So we've had acoustic recorders out there. They'll be out there again in June next year, recording so we can get a better understanding of vessel activities of all different kinds. We are undertaking an analysis to determine high priority foraging areas with updating a paper that was published in 2010. And then we're also bringing in a social values aspect of it so that we can make sure that all different interests feed into this process. So that is underway. The data has been being collected, and so we're pretty excited to see what we can come up with there. So that's really all I have. If people are interested in the Marine Resources Committee and helping out with our education and outreach efforts, particularly to voters, we do a lot of the boat shows, and we're very active on the docks during the summer, and we will always take help. So thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for sharing. Thanks for being here. Yeah. So if you want more soup, grab more soup. But we have a few more plants to stick in the ground out there and tuck away for the winter. So second round of people. You guys are fresh. If you were here for the first round and have a little bit of juice left in you, then you can for sure use it. Thank you.
Could I make a comment?
Yes.
You should try to get Roach Harbor to stop sponsoring the contest that who has the biggest salmon. I think that's still going on. If you could nail their asses, that would be great.
That would be a big one.
Sarah, I just wanted to say that let me just say something while everybody's still here. It is difficult sometimes to raise up hope in light of all the damaging factors that we see. Seagrasses are what I study, and in addition to the human impacts of these plants globally, we also now are faced with a disease that is triggered by higher temperatures. We've known about it for a long time. So there are all these points in front of us that lower our levels of hope. But this is hopeful, right here. Thanks to Sierra for bringing us together, speakers. And, I mean, it would be nice if we had uplifting things to say everything's great, but everything is not great. But because we're all together working on it, things at some point probably will be better. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for all of it.
Yeah, good one.
Thank you, Sarah.